Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you my Death Knight leveling guide for classic Wrath of the Lich King. As always, we'll cover the 5 most important topics. Firstly, we'll go through some very cheeky tips and tricks, the best talent build and glyphs, playstyle, weapon progression, and then lastly we'll talk about your stat priority to focus on while leveling. Anyway, let's not muck about, let's jump straight in. So if you guys are worried about not being able to get good gear during the pre-patch phase of the game before you jump into leveling in Wrath, well, don't worry, because there's an extremely easy option to get, the Arcanite Ripper. It's actually a weapon that you can get from a pre-patch event. And I've been reading Wowhead comments from years and years ago, and apparently it drops every single time. And many people are going to be running that pre-patch event in Karazhan, so probably quite easily to get. If you don't end up getting this though, there's some other options in the weapon progression section of the video. Now guys, I'd recommend getting enough gold to afford dual spec before you jump into Wrath of the Lich King, because it's really useful having blood off spec while leveling, because it makes it much easier to solo certain elite quests. The fastest build to leveling is actually in Holy, I'll talk about that later. But sometimes you can't solo a particular elite quest because, well, blood is obviously much better for soloing. And you're going to miss out on loads of XP if you cannot complete a certain elite quest, because obviously elite quests give a cheeky cherry in the top when it comes to experience. Obviously I'd also recommend in that pre-patch phase of the game getting 25 quests ready to turn in. I actually have a really good list for the best 25 quests to get turned in. If you subscribe to my channel and go to my channel page, there will be a link in the description of my sub-trailer video, and that has a really good and fast 25 quest route that you can do. If you do want to take it a little bit further, members on my channel do also get access to a Behemoth quest list with over 1.7 million experience points. Now this didn't work on private servers because you can actually use Corpse Explosion on your pet, and it does ridiculous AoE damage. Well, it does while you're leveling anyway, because the damage is based on your ghoul's health pool. This can be very useful to get a little bit of extra AoE damage. I do actually use this quite often on big pulls because the damage is pretty mental. I'd also recommend to get some cheap consumables for leveling if you have some extra gold, because obviously I'd recommend saving gold for actual Wrath of the Lich King content, but if you can afford it, get some good consumables. This can be stuff like food buffs, elixirs, and weapon sharpening stones. Just remember, weapon sharpening stones are not useful on items over around about level 76. Now, got a cheeky macro for you, the Death Pat macro. What it does is when you don't already have your pet summoned, it will summon your pet, and then it will obviously Death Pact it, which returns a lot of health to you. The trick to this macro though is you've got to spam it. If your pet isn't already summoned, you've got to spam it, because you've got to wait for the pet to actually get out of the ground before you can sacrifice it. Definitely much better than having 2 separate keybinds though. Remember, you can also use Dark Command, which is obviously your taunt ability, to pull mobs closer to you so you can get bigger mob pulls, and obviously you can combine that with Death Grip to just get some extra enemies in your pool of enemies that you're about to kill. Another tip, this Death and Decay macro, what it does is you'd use Death and Decay instantly on your cursor location, so you don't even see the green reticule thing on the ground. It will just get your Death and Decay up much faster. You can also change that from at cursor to at player if you just want it to appear on your player's location. So similar to a mage's arcane explosion or a warrior's whirlwind, when you jump it does actually increase the range of blood boil slightly, so just remember that. I remember to actually make use of the corpses that you've killed in a previous pull in your next pull. You know, if there's going to be corpses lying on the ground, you can still blow those up to do AoE damage to the next group of enemies. Now let's run through the talents. First thing to talk about when it comes to talents is people argue so much about a certain point here or there, when in reality it makes probably about a hairline of difference. As long as you pick up the essential mandatory talents for leveling, you're going to be Bob's your uncle, and there's going to be nothing to worry about. I'm going to show you what talents I prefer to go for. If you prefer to go for something else, tell me in the comment section. Please do it respectfully and understand that people have different preferred playstyles. In tier 1, I'm going to go for Vicious Strikes and Virulence straight away. Long story short, extra crit and more hit chance. From here we're definitely going to get Epidemic. This extends our dot duration so it just perfectly fits into a mob pull, and you also get an extra death strike off before you have to refresh your diseases. You definitely cannot go without that talent. Mobility is also nice for the slight increased damage on Death Coil, reduced cooldown on Death and Decay, allowing us to use Death and Decay pretty much every single pull. And then we also get 3 points of Ravenous Dead for the flat strength increase, which is going to boost the power of strength gear, and also our ghoul. From here I like to get Corpse Explosion, and then you're going to put points into Necrosis. Necrosis is alright, some fairly decent passive damage. It's not absolutely groundbreaking damage because it's not AoE damage. We really just put points in Necrosis to get us down the tree. And from here we're definitely going to get on a Pale Horse, the most useful leveling talent in all of these trees, to be honest, because it's 20% increased movement speed. In the long term, you know, it's going to take about 30-40 hours of leveling in Wrath of the Lich King. That's going to save you a lot of time. Then we get Night of the Dead, obviously to get a permanent ghoul. It's a nice thing to have for I'm mainly using my ghoul, honestly, for the corpse explosions, because the corpse explosions are very fun on the pet. Then we get a point in Necrosis, again, just to get us down the tree. Then we're going to max out Impurity. This is 20% extra benefit from your attack power, and it goes very, very well with a talent over here called Bladed Armor that's going to increase our attack power per armor value. I also think Dirge is pretty essential. I've seen some builds that don't get Dirge. The amount of runic power you get from Dirge is really, really nice, because it's obviously going to an extra 5 runic power on every single one of your death strikes. You generate all that runic power up, and then you can burn it on corpse explosions for more AoE damage. Now here, I think you definitely have options. You definitely have to get Master of a Ghoul. You can't go without having a permanent ghoul. You can get points in Desecration. Desecration is quite nice, actually. If you're taking too much damage and you're pulling loads and loads of enemies, you can use Desecration to kite enemies, give a little bit of breathing room, wait for your Death Strike to come available, and then go back into melee range and do your Death Strike. I also like to go for Ghoul Frenzy. Not everyone likes to go for Ghoul Frenzy, but I think this is useful when I'm taking on elites. It's a nice extra cooldown that's going to boost my damage by a little bit. I'm definitely going to get improved in Holy Presence. One thing to note is an improved Holy Presence will work before you level 70 and unlock Unholy Presence, so you should be definitely getting it. From here, I like to get Unholy Blight. You don't really see the value of Unholy Blight that much in your day-to-day life as a Death Knight. It's more for when you're taking on elite enemies, and considering you just have to put 1 point in this for quite, well, not a huge DPS increase, but considering it's 1 talent point, it's a decent DPS increase for 1 talent point, especially as Unholy Blights do roll into each other, so it's quite useful again for when you're taking on elite enemies. From here, I like to just get 1 point in magic suppression. There's a lot of casting enemies in Wrath of the Lich King which are a pain in the backside, so the extra boost to your anti-magic shell and obviously the flat 2% less damage from magic is not that bad. I think it's the best option out of the others. Some people like to max out Desolation here, but personally, I never use Bloodstrike. So it's only going to really be useful when the rare situation where I use Bloodstrike on an elite enemy. Personally, not my preferred option, but some people do prefer to go for that. And from here, Bone Shield, Crypt Fever. Bone Shield is extremely nice because it protects you from 20% less damage. It's very useful when you're running around pulling mobs because you're going to get hit in the back a lot. Stops you from taking too much damage before you actually get the enemies clumped up in the first place. Crypt Fever, just flat disease increasing. This is, again, a very, very key talent that separates Unholy from the other specs. You kill mobs so much faster on Unholy spec. Yeah, you can probably pull more mobs in Blood spec because you have that slightly increased survivability. But since you kill the mob so much faster in Unholy definitely pulls ahead. And then to get you down the tree, you can put more points in Necrosis if you wish. I prefer putting some points in Magic Suppression because it is very useful in a number of situations. Then from here, I'm going to max out Ebon Plaguebringer, definitely Wandering Plague. These, again, so these 3 talents here, it's like the holy trinity of why Unholy is the Giga Chad spec for leveling. Increased disease damage, even more increased disease damage, and then now your diseases have a chance of an everyday tick to blow up and cause even more AoE damage. I've been playing Death Knight on the beta quite a bit now, and even with pretty bad gear, because of these 3 talents, mobs just totally melt. I can't wait to get my real Death Knight geared up and then do leveling because, yeah, with these 3 talents, I'm just going to melt the whole of Northrend. Then from here, you're definitely going to max out Rage of Rivendare and Summon Gargoyle. You can pick up Scare Strike if you want, if you're leveling purely by dungeons, or you just want it for the sake of it. Personally, I don't actually get it. The reason why I don't get it is because I'm just Death Striking all the time, and I'm not actually going to use Scare Strike. But really, it's up to you, because the only time that I personally use a Scare Strike over a Death Strike is when I'm on a dungeon boss. Then from here, I'm going to max out Butchery. When you combine Butchery and Dirge, your runic power just goes through the roof. It actually becomes quite a challenge to run out of runic power. You will always have enough runic power to use Corpse Explosion on cooldown, and that's what we want. Then I'm going to put 3 points in Blade Barrier. The only reason why I do that is because I'm not using any of the abilities that the Subversion talent benefits. So there's just really not that much point of having it, to be honest. And I like to go for Bladed Armor. Bladed Armor goes very well with like the talent I've mentioned earlier, Impurity, and it scales when you get better and better gear as you level up. I've tested this against Black Ice. Bladed Armor just does more damage. Some people like to go for 2 weapon spec here. I mean, it's okay, but I care more about increasing my AoE damage when I'm building a talent build for Unholy DK while leveling, so I honestly I don't go for it. You may want to get it if you want, but I would prefer to get some survivability talents over slightly increased melee damage. Rune Tap becomes very useful while leveling, because I like to use it between pulls just to top my health up, along with Death Pact. And then we're going to max out Dark Conviction. Well, we'll get 3 points in it, well 4 points in it, and then I'll start putting points into improved Rune Tap. The reason why I like Dark Conviction over like any of the other talents is because the extra crit increases the chance of Wandering Plague proccing. Then from here, I mean, you can finish off in Rune Tap if you like, or you can finish off in Vendetta. It's really up to you, depends on your playstyle, depends what you're doing. If you're doing insanely crazy chain pulls, then Vendetta is going to be more useful, because if you're killing mobs very frequently, you're going to get that 6% maximum health back again very frequently. But if you're not doing crazy playstyles like that, you're probably better off with Rune Tap, because it's a great ability to just top your health between pulls. And now you are, you know, one last point, you're level 80, so then you're going to respec into something for endgame. Now let me talk you through my glyphs. Most people are going to go for Glyph of Icy Touch and Glyph of the Ghoul. Glyph of Icy Touch, extra Frost Fever damage, big increase to AoE damage, so yeah, great for leveling. Glyph of the Ghoul, extra damage on your Ghoul. Your Ghoul's always there most of the time. And since Corpse Explosion damage is actually based on the Ghoul's total HP, and this glyph increases the Ghoul's HP, it therefore increases Corpse Explosion damage. Now, we would go for Glyph of Death and Decay if this was available pre-Wrath of the Lich King, but unfortunately it's not. But if you're leveling in the future, then get Glyph of Death and Decay and Icy Touch. And the priority, in my opinion, probably is to get Death and Decay over Icy Touch, because that's going to be a bigger increase to AoE damage, and then get Glyph of the Ghoul last. Well, actually you won't be able to get that until level 80. And you definitely have to get Glyph of Pestilence and Glyph of Corpse Explosion. The increased range, it only seems small when you read it, but it's bigger than it appears. These talents here help massively during your pulls, and because my personal playstyle is to sacrifice my Ghoul quite a lot, so I'm definitely going to get Glyph of Raised Dead, so I don't have to stack my bads with loads and loads of corpse dust. Now guys, let's talk about playstyle, how to do really big pulls efficiently and effectively. So I've got a little clip from the beta here. You gotta bear in mind guys, I think I've been awake for about 17 hours in this clip. Also, I'm in really bad gear. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the mobs up while I'm mounted. I've got, well, I should have Bone Shield up, but I don't. And then clumping the mobs together, popping Death and Decay, get your diseases up, spread your diseases, and then spam Death Strike. Now, if you want to min-max that even more, I'd recommend getting your dots up with Pestilence before your Death and Decay for a little bit of extra damage. And then I'm just burning all my runic power with Corpse Explosion whenever a corpse becomes available. As you can see, the corpses are just blowing up. And what you'll probably have to do, as you can see my diseases rolled off there, you probably may, if you're doing bigger pulls, have to refresh your diseases at least once. Now, my health is obviously quite low in these clips. That is because, well, first of all, I've been awake for 17 hours. Secondly, my gear is really bad in these clips. You'll be able to get much better gear than this during a pre-patch event. Maybe not so much if you're playing a fresh server. If you're playing a fresh server, you might not be able to get the best gear in the world, which means you probably want to be able to pull around like 3 to 5 mobs at once. But the principle is fairly simple, guys. Get all your dots up on all the enemies, get Death and Decay down, keep your health topped up with Death Strike, burn your runic power with Corpse Explosion, maybe fill in with a Death Coil from time to time, and obviously use cooldowns like Icebound Fortitude and Bone Shield to keep yourself alive. I'd also recommend to use a Gargoyle on cooldown because you know what, it's there, so you may as well get some use out of it. Another thing I do like to do is I like to combine my Death Strike and my Rune Strike into a macro together, although I definitely would not recommend doing that when you're doing tanking because you might burn too much runic power and not have enough runic power to use a particular cooldown. So only do that while you're solo leveling. So weapon progression guys, what I've done is I've made a big level 1 to 80 list for all the good two-handers in the game. So this weapon progression list is useful for Death Knights, Warriors and Paladins. For an access to this weapon list, it's going to be on my subscriber only video, just check the description of my subscriber only video. And lastly, let's talk about gear picking. So, you know, what stats should you actually be focusing on while you're leveling? Long story short, what you want to do is focus on strength and crit pieces. What we care about the most, like I've said before, is increasing AoE damage. Strength and crit increase our AoE damage more than anything. Hate is a nice stat and everything, increases the gargoyle damage, increases our melee damage, but we don't really care about that when we're doing raid bosses at endgame. What we care about is doing stupid damage with our Wandering Plague and our dots. Now, plate gear pieces are normally going to be better than agility pieces. I know agility pieces have, you know, sometimes great hit chance on them, which, by the way, you do have to maintain at 6%. That would be my recommendation anyway, because that gives you the hit cap on enemies 2 levels higher than you. But normally, they're going to be worse because, first of all, your pet doesn't scale off attack power, it scales off strength. So you're losing damage there. You have talents like Ravenous Dead and other talents in the Death Knight talents that are going to give your character a percentage increase of your strength, not your attack power. So strength scales better when you equip it than attack power. Plus, agility gear makes you more squishy. So my advice, honestly, is to avoid agility gear as much as you can. I only tend to go for leather pieces if, first of all, it's a redonkulous DPS upgrade, because I've been unlucky getting a good strength piece, or it has hit chance on it and I need to get that 6% hit cap. Other than that, you should be going for plate pieces all the way, because plate pieces give you way more armor, which is going to obviously reduce the damage you take. You've got the strength scaling like I mentioned, and then also with the talent bladed armor, that's going to increase your attack power for the amount of armor that you have. So normally, since plate gear gives you more armor and therefore more attack power with the bladed armor talent and everything else I've mentioned, normally strength gear just normally is better. Strength, plate gear. So try to avoid leather and mail gear pieces as much as you can and prioritize plate gear pieces. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is MetaGoblin. Until the next video, ciao.